Hello, this is going to be Module 1. I have attached the notes in your Module 1 folder. After this lesson, you will have a better understanding of the growing ELL populations, common acronyms and terms used related to ELLs, factors that should be considered when working with ELLs, the laws that relate to ELLs, and also be able to recognize the diversity of ELLs in Missouri. So this is a little bit of information that's updated from your textbook. In 2000, there were approximately 3.8 million ELLs, and that has increased by more than a million students by 2016. So ELLs are increasing in our classrooms. If you look at the map, you can see the darkest green states are the states with 10% or higher of their students being ELL students. Okay, so these are languages that are spoken. Approximately 76% of ELL students speak Spanish. And then there's a great disparity between Spanish and the other languages. You will also see English on this list. And English is referring to students who do speak English at home. However, they live in a multilingual home, and so they are exposed to other languages besides English. So these are a few acronyms that are used in the field, and it's important to know these acronyms because they're used fluently by anybody who works in education, and so it's very important to know what they mean. The most common term is an ELL, which is an English language learner. That's a student who is learning English. And you might also hear ELs, an English learner. People use those terms simultaneously. So they may use one, and then in another setting, they may use the other. The second is LEP, that's limited English proficiency. This is not a term that is used regularly because it's kind of focused on the child's deficit. The next term is ESL, that's English as a second language. So those are students who are learning English as their second language. That's kind of a specific term. EFL are students who are learning English as a foreign language. So those are students who live in an area or a community where English is not the dominant language, it's not the native language. So they are learning English even though where they live, English is not the native language. The next one is CLD, and that is the most encompassing acronym to describe English language learners or culturally and linguistically diverse learners. SLA is second language acquisition, and that's the field that studies how second languages are acquired. Newcomers are learners who are new to the US and new to English. A lot of schools have newcomer classrooms, and so those are the students with the highest needs. Target language is the language that's being learned. And in L1 is the native language or the first language. L2 is the target language, the language that is going to be learned. It doesn't necessarily have to be English. Immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers and migrants are um, make up the ELL population. So immigrants is someone who makes a conscious decision to leave their home country. They have a plan and they decide to leave. They go through a process. A refugee is somebody who is forced to leave because of violence, war, persecution, things going on in their country. Asylum seekers are seeking refuge. They are fearing being harmed or violence, and so they want international protection. They're seeking refuge in another country. And a migrant is someone who moves from place to place. It's usually for economic reasons. They usually follow crops or they follow jobs and they just move from place to place to place as the jobs move. Okay, so when you have an ELL learner in your classroom, there are many factors that you should consider when working with those learners. And so we're going to go over these factors in depth. They are length of residence in the U.S., literacy skills, previous schooling, education background of their parents, socioeconomic status and resources that are available to them, their personal life experiences, and their cultural norms. So these are all factors that should be taken into consideration. Okay, so when we talk about length of residency, we're going to talk about how long they've been in the country. And so we can use decimal generations to describe those students. So first generation is someone who comes to the US as an adult. Second generation would be the children of the first generation parents. And the largest number of ELLs are second generations. Their parents moved to this country, they are their children. Generation 1.5 are kids that are from age 6 to 13 who come to the US. So they have a little bit of their home culture and then they learn the culture here in the US. Generation 1.25 are kids that are from 13 to 17. So they have a lot of their home culture. They were exposed to it for 13 years and then they moved to the US. They are closest to their mom and dad as far as having their home cultural rituals, routines in place. They've been doing it for a long time. Generation 1.75 is close to the second generation, but they're not. They're from ages 6 and younger, and they may have some of their native language culture because babies start to learn language very, very young, very early, in fact, before they're born. However, they gain more American culture than their native culture. Literacy skills and previous schooling is another factor that you should consider when working ELLs. A lot of young learners struggle to gain those foundational literacy skills because they don't have support at home. So their parents aren't able to tutor them and work with them at home because the parents don't have the skills. Also, they may have difficulty with transferring the skills that they already have, the literacy skills, transferring between their native language and English. Older students may have gaps in their education where they have had to be away from formal schooling for a while. And um, also, in a positive way, that's something that you could consider. Sometimes students who have strong literacy skills, it becomes easier for them because they're using those things that they can transfer to learn even more English. You also have to consider the linguistic context. So you want to know about their language that they speak. How does the language compare to English? How are they similar? How is it different? And use those things that will help make the transfer between the two languages easier. And then also the things that are going to make the transfers negative, you can also make sure that you explicitly address those things. There's a lot of research around the education of parents and its effect on children. The mother's education is related to reading levels. Parents' education is an inter I'm sorry, parent education is an indicator of the child's behavior, what they believe about education, how they believe that education will help them and benefit them. It also is linked towards their achievement. And so it's really important to consider that. Also, trying to communicate with parents may not be very easy if there's a language barrier. And so teachers have to find ways to communicate with parents because the more we get parents involved in their students' education, the more helpful they can be. So, a parent is an ally to a teacher, and we should see parents as allies. One resource that my school uses is Propio, and we're able to call into Propio, find a translator who speaks the language that we are trying to target to the family, and that translator is able to be on the phone with us so that we can speak to each other. So sometimes parents might want to communicate with the teacher and they don't know how, and so Proprio opens the door for that to happen. And then once they know that the service is available, then they are more apt to using it. Socioeconomic status. It's important to consider that because you want to know what kind of resources the student has, what kind of housing they have. Do they have health care? Do they have internet service? Are they able to get a good night's rest? Do they have healthy food to eat at home? Because all of that can affect the student's education. Also, you want to consider their legal status, the legal status of their parents, fear of deportation, fear of stereotypes and discrimination, and also fear of the current climate. There are a lot of things going on politically, and families are aware of that, and sometimes that causes them not to come up to the school, not to participate in school activities. They also sometimes tell the children not to talk about certain things. So you always want to be cognizant of the things that are going on in our students' lives. Okay, you would also want to consider their social and cultural norms. You want to take into consideration their religion, their customs, their gender roles within their culture, their views on teaching and learning, and their family structure. Okay, so now that we have that background out the way, where do we begin as educators of ELLs? I think an important place for us to begin is with our mindset, our perspective with ELLs. So we have to choose to view English language learners from a deficit perspective. So focus on what they can't do, what skills they don't have, or we have to choose to view them from an asset perspective. We focus on everything that they bring to the table, their language, their culture, and all of their experiences that they've had, and their ability to bounce back, to be resilient. This is just a visual, and one person is focused on everything that they have, and then the other person is focused on everything that's missing. So I challenge you to focus on what these students bring to the table and not on their gaps, the things that we need to fill in. So this is a short video that we're going to watch. I will link the video in the PowerPoint as well. Sorry, my computer speakers were still connected to the interactive board at my school, so I think we should be able to hear it now. So this is one of my favorite videos because it's from the perspective of teachers who were ELL learners. And I just think about the last teacher that spoke on the video. She said the best thing that we can do is include these students and make them feel welcome, make them feel loved. And I hope that you take that with you. That is our job, to bring them in and to see everything that they bring to the table, all of their experiences, everything about their culture, the country that they came from. Those things will enrich the learning in our classroom, not to see it as a deficit. So, the services that we offer English language learners have evolved over time. There are court cases that are historical court cases because they changed how we view English language learners and how we educate English language learners. So the Johnson-Reed Act, also known as the immigration law, was in your text. It's an old law, but it's been overruled. It limited the amount of immigrants from non-European countries. And so all immigrants aren't seen as equal. So 80% at the time, 87% of the immigrants who were allowed to come in the country were from European countries, and it restricted immigrants from non-European countries. That was overruled in 1968. So that opened the door for more immigrants from non-European countries to enter into the U.S. The next law is Loud versus Nichols, and basically, this law established that just providing the same textbooks, the same teachers, the same curriculum is not the same as teaching English language learners. So you just can't simply provide the same things, the same access to education. Learners have to be educated intentionally and different. The next court case is the Castaneda versus Pickard. It is from Texas, and it established this three-prong approach when kind of assessing or implementing ELL curriculum. First of all, it has to be best practice. So it has to be derived from educational theory. So it can't just be something that the teachers make up. We want to do this. It has to be something that is from educational theory, from educational research. Also, it has to be implemented effectively. It takes training to implement curriculum and programs effectively. And so, this three-prong approach makes sure it's kind of like a check and balance that these students are given the best shot. Also, there has to be an evaluation of the effectiveness of these curriculums and programs. And if they don't pass the evaluation, something needs to change. Next, there is Pryor versus Doe, and this changed the law so that schools could not restrict students from coming to school because of their legal status. All students in this country are entitled to free public education, not based on their immigrant status. So if you are a child in this country, you deserve a free public education. You're entitled to it. And the last one, it may be a law that most people are maybe the law that most people are familiar with is the No Child Left Behind Act. There is Title III within the No Child Left Behind Act that has changed a lot of education for ELL learners. And Title III outlines what ELL programs need to look like in order to receive funding. Okay, so I think we're almost to the end of our presentation. This last slide just is a breakdown of the ELLs or the CLDs, that's wrong, the CLDs in Missouri. So the largest number are Latinos from Mexico and Central America. The second largest group are Somalis the Korean, Sudanese, and Iraqis. So those are the students that you will have in Missouri classrooms. And I'm sure those groups change throughout the country. This is a list from Missouri. Okay, these are some references. Again, like I said, I will post the video that was a part of this slide if it didn't come through. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you.